When you have 3 kids and 2 dogs, quarantines are not all about jacuzzis and smoking cigars, are they? Recently tricked the kids and told them they could watch as much TV as they want, provided it was Blue Planet, Planet Earth, or something educational.
The trick has worn off.
How's homeschooling going?
Good.
What did you learn today?
Nothing.
What do you mean nothing? What's the point of homeschooling? Are you learning how to play the piano? You will come out of this quarantine Liberace. What are you doing? Why are you drinking honey?
All said and done, quarantines are not going to be stogies and jacuzzis for most of us, but make the most of it, enjoy the family, above all else, stay safe, and never lose your sense of humor.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed that video from our In the Know team featuring a Montreal dad. It shows that parenting during a pandemic can be tough, even when you're trying to work alongside that. So today we're going to be discussing practical tips and advice for parents who are balancing working from home with kids. We want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm Amanda D'Souza, and I'm going to be moderating the segment here. And we really want to take all of your questions and comments throughout the segment. So please leave them below, and we'll try to get to as many as we can throughout the segment. Now to our speakers. Our host today is senior producer from Verizon Media Studios, Alia McLeod. She's an award-winning media professional with 20 years in the industry. She's produced and directed a diverse slate of digital content, TV and films that have focused on modern parenting. She's also a mom to 1-year-old Kingston. Our guest today is one of Canada's most notable parenting experts, Alyson Schafer. She's a family counselor, TV personality, columnist, spokesperson, educator, and consultant. You'll recognize her as a regular contributor for HuffPost Canada Parents. She's also a best-selling author of 3 parenting books, including her most recent, Ain't Misbehaving. Thank you both for joining us, and with that, I'll pass it over to Alia to start things off.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Alyson, I am so excited that we have this opportunity to chat about a really important topic today.
Thank you. And as important as it is, and I know parents are reaching out with so many great questions, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. What a great kickoff of this segment with some levity. There's the first tip of the day, which is we got to roll with the punches by having some humor, and he did a great job. If I start drinking honey, that'll be a good sign that things are
a good sign.
Yeah, a little too hot under the collar in my house when I start drinking honey.
Well, let's jump in. Like you said, we've got some questions already rolling in from our audience, but I wanted to start off and talk a little bit about mental health and self-care. With COVID-19 posing such a threat to people's mental health, it's been a really good opportunity for many adults to reflect on what they know about self-care. As adults, many of us know how important self-care is, but it's also really important for our kids. So I wanted to ask about the best kinds of self-care for our kids and for our teens.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing is to know that we are social creatures, and so we're socially contagious to one another. Parents know that if you've got yourself in a better position of equanimity, that's going to set the tone for the house. It's going to help your child with their mental health. That's the first thing. And also because we're social, I know we're social distancing physically, but we still need that sense of connection. So we want to make sure that our children and our teens find creative ways to keep connected. And that might be Zoom classroom, or Google Classrooms with some of their classmates from school. It may be that they are going for walks 6 feet apart if they're teens, and they can do that unsupervised. Of course, we've got to talk to our teens about how to do that responsibly and safely, and have a trust that they understand the importance of the global pandemic, not just the strength of their own immune system. So whether we give them extra screen time to do that online, and also just the other classic things that we know about ways to de-stress ourselves, and certainly the basics to the body, the good night's sleep, the eating good nutrition, but also for and exercising. My goodness, I can't say enough about the need for us to get out and exercise, but also to allow ourselves some of that downtime recharge. And so that may be chilling out to some brain-numbing television, which is okay. But it may also be picking up a new hobby like playing the guitar or doodle art or something where the brain kind of gets into flow. And I'm a big believer in mindfulness meditation. And we've seen now that they have adapted practices and apps for different age groups. So there is content specifically for teens, but there's also guided meditations that are much more story-like. EvolveKids.ca has a great program that's for younger kids, but there's definitely resources out there for mindfulness.
And a lot of those things can be done, solo or be done as a family, which is a really great opportunity for the kids. I wanted to know
we need
about.
to model this for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to know about coping mechanisms and what signs parents should look for if their kids aren't coping with everything going on right now.
Well, to your point, all of us are kind of doing our best. And right now we can see the creativity of people just kind of managing the best they can. And we need to lower our expectations. So, we would expect that our kids would have lower periods of time or lower motivations. We would expect people to maybe have a little harder time getting out of bed to, face the doldrums of the day kind of a thing. But where we need to start watching is for coping mechanisms that are really more avoiding behaviors. It is not okay to turn to drugs and alcohol. It's not okay to escape into online gaming for the entire duration. Not to say that there isn't some social benefits to gaming too, but when we're avoiding the other aspects of our life. And of course, other worrisome signs to look for is anytime that you see kind of a change in baseline, your kids best. You trust your spidey senses. If they start over isolating, stop wanting to hang out with the family at family time, if you're seeing any changes in things like their eating patterns, and that can be overeating or loss of appetite, excessive sleeping or not being able to sleep at all, headaches, stomach aches, breakouts of eczema. These are all the way the body starts to say that the stress load is too high. And at that point, then I would say these are yellow flags that our kids are in a higher distress situation than is really comfortable for them.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering about when kids don't actually speak up, when you notice some of those red flags, but they aren't communicating with their parents. Is this an opportunity where parents can reach out to friends, family to do some check-ins where, their kids feel more comfortable talking with maybe peers or, like I said, extended family? Is that an option there?
Absolutely. The acting out and the mood swings in our kids may not be things that they can actually track back to something that's an identifiable stressor, because this is more sort of the wallpaper of their life right now. And it may be hard for them to put that into language, especially young kids. They really do speak through their behaviors. That is, behavior is a form of communicating. So we have to kind of untangle that for them and then let them know. The important thing is that it's some way to express it. And that expressing can be verbal to us if they want to talk to us, but it's okay if they want to talk to another trusted adult. I think every home should have the kids help phone text number, because of course they don't talk on the phone, kids anymore, but to text connect to 686868, identify other adults that they feel more comfortable talking to, as you say, an older cousin or an aunt or uncle, coach, somebody in their life that they like to speak to. But they can also draw your feelings, journal your feelings, even if you burn them after so nobody has to see them. It's the act of expression that helps us move through the sort of rumination and the dwelling and sort of freeze those emotions.
Now, I want to just mention to our audience, any of the resources that Alyson mentions or that we talk about on the show will come up in the comment section. So make sure to check there if you're looking for any of those resources. I wanted to now jump, Alyson, to the parents. Making time for ourselves can sometimes feel like a luxury. It can feel a bit selfish, definitely a distant thought, especially during this time of pandemic parenting. How can we as parents tackle that guilt and make self-care a priority? And what's the best kind of self-care for us parents right now? And does Netflix count?
Yeah. Ali, I don't know how we're going to convince parents that self-care is not selfish. Self-care is being responsible. That if we think of ourselves in the role of a parent as being a 24/7 care provider, you would never expect any of the other people that are working on the front lines during this pandemic to not have some downtime to recuperate, that we need it in order to perform the tasks that we need to do. And because one of the things that we're most concerned about in this pandemic is social cohesion and the connectivity, the mental health and the relations of those people that are stuck at home together, that we have to lead as parents. So if we are not recovered from the amount of stress of all of that, we're not going to do our job well. So I would say start with an experiment. Even if you feel guilty, go ahead, handle a little bit of guilt for one day and decide what you might do to decompress. And to your point, if that for you is Netflix, go for it. But pay attention to the things that calm you down. I can't prescribe for parents, because if you're someone who hates yoga, doing yoga because it's supposedly good is going to make you feel more, put out, more put upon, more burdened, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Where on the other hand, if you say, wow, I really love doing a jigsaw puzzle, I just lose all sense of time. Great. That's your answer. Jigsaw puzzles are for you. Other people, it's knitting. So long as you find that thing that allows you to kind of release your mind and not feel like you have to perform, that it feels like it's rejuvenating, then that's the thing for you. So do it for one day and notice that your parenting improves. Your wick isn't as short, your mood is more stable, and then you'll realize it may feel at the time that I'm carving out an hour to do jigsaw puzzles instead of helping with homeschooling, but I am so much better at helping my kids with homeschooling if I actually had my recovery. Otherwise, I'm just, and then we're hashtag not my best parenting moment happens a little bit too much. So I would say experiment with it and know that you are modeling self-care to your kids. So you're doing a wonderful gift to your kids on two accounts when you take time for you.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think doing what makes sense for you is so important. When you see all these social media posts of people, really killing it looks like at just starting new hobbies, taking on side hustles, that might not work for you. So do what makes sense for you, I think, is such a great advice. One of the things we talked about levity early on, one of the things I know in my household that we've incorporated, there was a tweet that went viral earlier. Molly Tolsky said, a pro tip for couples suddenly working from home together, get yourselves an imaginary coworker to blame things on. In our apartment, Cheryl keeps leaving her dirty water cups all over the place, and we really don't know what to do about her. So that's something we blame Cheryl on everything. And that just with the toddler running around, that just brings so much levity to our day. And we just give ourselves a bit of grace, which is really, really nice.
Well, I love that. It shows the goodwill. It's saying of all the times, it's time to just let things roll off our backs, to not hold ourselves accountable to the same level. And look at the humanity that's coming in, to suddenly put the value of the relationship above the perfection of a clean kitchen. The fact that with people working from home, that kids are photo bombing their Zoom meetings to their bosses and dogs are barking while they're trying to do a sales pitch. And everyone's being okay with that. Because guess what? We're just humans. And I think it's going to be liberating. I think people are not going to want to go back to some of the pre-COVID arrangements that we had, because part of this really does speak to our humanity, and that family and our work lives, we're always intertwined, that we are holistic people that have to worry about parents and worry about kids and worry about dogs and worry about neighbors. And that comes to work with us every day. And now that's being made more apparent, but it's more true.
So true. So true. Well, I want to jump into schedules, but before I do that, I want to remind our audience, if you have a comment, if you've got a question, make sure to leave it in the comments section below. We'll get to those near the end of the segment. So I want to talk, like I said, about the power of a schedule. And I want to touch on technology, which is playing a big and really probably a bigger part of a lot of people's lives, a lot of people's schedules these days. Prior to the pandemic, many parents probably tried to limit screen time. I know for myself, we would try to hide our screen time from our son. And now we find ourselves using our devices for so much more, outside of work and just, school. We're using it to communicate with friends and family. We're using it to probably do some self-care, even playing games. What matters most now when it comes to screen time, and how much is too much?
It's such a great time to be talking about this. I never really liked time as the unit measure for how we are being responsible with how devices are being integrated into our lives in the healthiest sense of the way. Because time doesn't really explain what you're doing on your apparatus. That we do, it's such an interface now between our banking and our schoolwork and our communicating with our neighbors and our looking up recipes. And there's so much that we just do through a screen that it's more about paying attention to whether or not it's active or passive, and whether we are being creative and producing or whether we are simply consuming. Does it fall under administration, education, leisure? There's so many different categories. So we have to look at the types of activities that we're doing online, and then balancing it with the fact that you can't do everything online, that as much as it's great to keep up with your friends, you still want to engage with the in real life people that are your family, that are in the four walls around you. And as much as it's great to do Wii bowling, and that looks like activity, that's not the same as actually exercising, getting your heart rate up and for a run out in the fresh air. So we have to look at that overall balance. And I think now, given that we are limited in how we can do some of our socializing and some of those other tasks, we need to widen the boundaries on how much time we spend online. And so, for example, we've seen people having virtual cocktail hours on a Zoom connection, and that might go on for an hour. Is that screen time or is that cocktail hour? So it's really how you're interpreting the use of that time.
That's so true. It's about the content, right? Just
Absolutely.
Like you said about that content. So when we talk about establishing a schedule, I want to show an example from Audrey Lau, who's our editor-in-chief at HuffPost Canada. She shared this with her Twitter followers, and she created this partly for her sanity, she says, but it also helped ease a lot of her kids' anxiety. We did a check-in with Audrey over the schedules that she had created, and if we could show our viewers what those schedules look like. Pretty intense, but it worked for her family. But she said that, she quotes saying, "We've tweaked it several times to adjust for school and work and the kids' feedback. Things like, there's just too much boring stuff in the morning. I'm a big believer in doing whatever works best for your family and for ours. Schedules help set expectations and provide some predictability for the kids in this time of such unpredictability." So, for some parents who are looking to establish a schedule, Alyson, and find they are several weeks into working from home with kids, what's the best way to tackle this?
Well, I love so much of her suggestions. So the idea that it's co-created. Kids do not like to have a schedule imposed on them, but they'll be much more likely to uphold the schedule if they had a voice in creating it. The second thing is she's made it visual. We do a lot of talking, but unless you post it somewhere, and even if you have kids as young as your 1-year-old, if you do it with visual symbols, they can understand that a little picture of an outfit means it's time to get dressed if you give them the time prompt. Or you can use a clock and you can color the different hours of the clock in different colors, and then make a little color key that says during the red, that's when we have school time, and during the blue, that's when we go outside to play. So you can do things that are visual and concrete to help our kids understand the schedule. And then she's also done a beautiful job of understanding that it's iterative, that you look, you try, you see, you tweak, that it shouldn't feel like you're living in a military regime with all of this. Even if the day goes completely off the rails, at least you've got something to come back to. Some people have told me that their work schedule is such that they haven't found any way to get a schedule that works. And they've decided to opt for a to-do list. And in the to-do list, they make sure that they have a couple of the highest important things. So in order for me to go to bed tonight and feel like I was an okay mother, what's the most important thing? Okay, I got to make sure I play cards or do something with my kids for at least an hour. What are the 2 or 3 most important things I need to do to feel like I really still provided service to my employer so I'm not falling off my job? And what are the couple things I might do in terms of house chores or maintaining my marriage or my friendships? Just think, maybe a little to-do list might also give you a little freedom of the time, but at least you feel like you are in control and it's not the tail wagging the dog.
Exactly. So make sure the kids are involved in creating that schedule. And maybe it's not necessarily a schedule, but a to-do list that could work in your household.
Yeah, I like agreements. It's not about laws. It's a social agreement. How are we going to get through this conundrum? You've got stuff to do. I've got stuff to do. Let's work it out. Let's write it down.
That's awesome. And everybody signs that in the household and you stick to that agreement.
You can get kids to sign if you want. I think my kids would think well, that's a little over the top. Don't you think I'm good on my word?
All right. Well, let's talk about, of course, working and schooling at home. So work and school from home is probably not a phrase most parents would agree should go together. Here's a picture of my son interrupting my morning team meeting. He is always coming in and interrupting the morning team meetings. It does bring a bit of levity. The team does enjoy it. But I want to know realistically how parents are supposed to juggle all of this.
the best you can. What I say that is that there isn't like, wow, if I got the winning formula and did the winning formula, that I would have this licked. Nobody has this licked. We weren't really ever meant to have all these conditions. So be as kind to yourself as you would to anybody else. We are our own worst enemies with this. And to know that everybody else is looking at you with care and compassion. I would say that. But I would also say that we need to put some energy into this, that if we want to train our kids, that there are times when we have to work and times when we're not available, that this is a really important training piece. And I think it's an important part of parenting anyways, that we want our kids to realize they're not the center of the universe. The world doesn't revolve around them, that in fact, you're joining a group and a group has other things that call to their needs and attention. That yes, I have to go to the bathroom and I want the door closed. And yes, I can't play with you. I have to go make dinner. That's presenting the reality of life to our children and trusting that if we spend some time training them, that they will make that accommodation and be reasonable about the amounts of demands that they make on our time. So I would start with when you're making that schedule, and especially with a 1-year-old, I would make very small chunks of time so that he can get the idea, when I close my office door and I put a little red stop sign, I'm going to be in here working for half an hour, assuming there's somebody on the other side of the door. And in half an hour, I'm going to look at the clock, could be the little red hand. It could be that you set a timer, but ding, when that timer goes off, you come out and you want to be there. Hey, I'm not working anymore. I'm so happy to be with you. Let's do something. Oh, Mr. Clock says I have to go back to work. See you at snack time. Bye-bye. And they might scream at the door. They might stick their fingers underneath the threshold and scream bloody murder for the first day. But if you can kind of work through the noise for day 1, day 2, by day 3, they're going to start to understand the pattern and they're going to respect that limit and boundary and give you that time. And you can also be strategic. If you got an important call, put them on the iPad. Works. Again, is this good parenting every day of the year? No, but these are extraordinary times that will come to an end. Or go to the car where you have absolute quiet and take your call from the car in the driveway. So there's a real act of creativity and nobody is judging you. Nobody is saying you had a bad parenting day because you gave your kid a bowl of Smarties so you could get your report done. It's okay. It's COVID, man. You got it. You can do whatever you want.
No judgment here. Yeah. And I love the idea.
Judgment.
Got to set boundaries, but when you're on with your kids and you're spending that time with them, you can't be in and out. You can't be working in one hand and trying to connect in the other hand with your kids. So you have to be on the entire time. That's definitely true.
And again, that symbol of we can't multitask. I know parents think that they can, but you really can't. And what'll end up happening is you'll be so distracted when you are with your kids. You might be physically in their presence, but your mind is still in work mode, and they can perceive that you're not really fully present. So try to really make sure you carve out that time to do that good, mindful connection with them. It will feel very different, and it will buy you more time away from them because they will feel topped up.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about a lot of those kids who are now having to experience that virtual or distant learning, and how can you motivate some of these students who really, they don't care. They might think that marks don't matter. What do we do in situations like this?
Well, I think we have to remember that the education system was trying to be helpful and wanted to provide some curated material that allowed for a schedule where kids could still stay connected to their primary groups of their classroom, which is where our kids feel their sense of belonging. And they were doing it in a way to be helpful. And they want families to know that if it's helpful, great. But if you are now fighting with a non-motivated kid or a child that maybe has a learning disability or ADHD and you are not a trained teacher and you never have had to deal with these situations as a parent before, that you are not expected to be a homeschooler, that you're not expected to make this shred the relationship in order for them to learn a few ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And it may be that you step back from that curriculum, but it still would say that our kids are going to be home for a while. What else could engage their mind that is something else that's in a learning module? It might be watching documentaries. Maybe it turns out they're like really crazy about history and they start watching the History Channel. That's still education without you getting into a fight. And I do think that teens sometimes can feel like it's, if you can't figure out what's the point, that is a real turnoff. If I told you to go paint your kitchen twice in a row, and you go, why? I just painted it. It doesn't need painting. It would feel like a ridiculous thing to do. So we might have to find the hook to say why it would matter. And depending on what grade they're in, there could be a different story about that. And so I really contextual learning that is important to kids is where you're going to get that engagement.
Awesome. So Alyson, I wanted to actually jump to some of the readers' questions that we've had come in. And Amanda, what are people saying out there? What are some of the comments, the questions that people have posed?
Sure. So I'll give a comment from Facebook. Denise Jones says, we have to stop judging ourselves. And you guys did talk about that off the top in our first segment, but if you have any other comments to Denise.
I think many of us have maybe not been so starkly aware until this has come up, how much we have some kind of a script of what it is to be a good worker, what it is to be a good mother, what it is to be a good whatever. And that's when we start to should, because we have a vision and expectation of what it should look like. And so we end up shoulding all over ourselves. And so we have to, if we drop expectation, which is a vision or an image of how something should be. And instead, this is where mindfulness training comes into place. Live in the moment and look around and say, you know what, right now, it could be better, but it could also be worse. This is actually okay. I am surviving this minute, and this is what this minute looks like. And this minute looks like putting upside down on the floor and 52 emails I haven't returned right now. But you know what? I got a roof over my head. We're all alive. We're all here together. This is my wacky minute. And I think that some of the humor off the top helps too. Just laugh with the chaos of it. Think back to MASH. Now I'm aging myself. Do you remember the show MASH? You kind of had to be wackadoodle because the conditions were so crazy that if you weren't wackadoodle, you really would lose your marbles. So I would say just roll with it. There's no shoulds. There's just getting by. It's all good.
I love that. I'm going to incorporate that. Stop shooting all over ourselves in my vocabulary.
We do it all the time.
Amanda, any other questions or comments from our audience?
We did have Ayel on YouTube who asks, do you think that e-learning can be as effective as in class? How long of this continued isolation and e-learning methods do you think will have potential long-term implications for kids?
Oh, I would love to talk about this for a really long time, but I'll try to be concise. We know from research that you can buy off-the-shelf packages that are so engaging in the programming that they have improved kids' math grades, for example, up 2 grades in just a couple of months. That a lot of what kids are doing online, maybe not even knowing that they are learning curriculum, is so well designed. And of course, we've got Apple Classroom. There more and more designers are going in to the education space. And I think it's going to make it a lot harder to go back to trying to do a worksheet on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper when you can go into virtual reality and fly a plane. And, so I think education is moving that way. There's another great resource for parents if you would like. Let's Talk Science has a site for STEM learning at home. And it's taken the curriculum from every grade in every province and taken the key points, and it's put up incredible learning modules. So just because your teacher has given some homework, if your kid's not engaging with how it's being taught there, feel free to just follow their interest. Feel free to go find some other dynamic places. There's interactive maps of the world and tours of zoos, and just be completely creative. I think the e-learning space is going to explode for kids.
Awesome. Amanda, I think we've got time for one more quick question.
Sure. Okay, so we had one more reader who asked, how do you minimize the guilt of not being able to pay full attention to your kids? I constantly feel like I'm doing both jobs, work and momming at half capacity, and feel so guilty that I can't enjoy my kids because I'm trying to keep up with my job and not lose it.
Yeah. So I think the guilt can be alleviated if we have on that schedule when we will be engaging with our kids and stick to that promise. I think it's also important, again, to change the story that we tell ourselves that a good mother should constantly be entertaining and in the servitude and presence of their kid. That is not actually how human beings were supposed to operate. That we always had to go out and forage for food or go kill the wildebeest or, go make something out of grass and, like it takes a lot of work to keep people alive. We weren't ever meant to sit, down and play Lego for 9 hours. That's not really how humans were evolved to be, that we always had to work and they needed to learn how to entertain themselves and how to play with siblings. And so, in fact, that's why they're worried about mental health and containment. The reason why they're worried about mental health and containment is that all you're going to have to do is play with your kids and they're going to have to play with you. We need to get you distracted with work and we need them to get a little distracted with learning so we don't eat each other up. So don't feel guilty about the time that you don't have, so long as when you are present, you have made a commitment to really being there and checking in with them when you're not. And so that game time, that fun time, that play time, and you may, like I said, I find every 40 minutes, if you're at home, is a good your mind can only go in 40-minute chunks. So every 15, whatever, come out and have a 15-minute snack break with them in between your little chunks of work job and make that family time around the table just to check in. So long as you're present and mindful, that's all the time they need.
That's such great advice, Alyson. Thank you so much. Thank you to our readers for commenting and listening in. Amanda, thanks so much for moderating for us today.
Yeah, thank you guys. And thank you to everyone out there for your questions and for joining us. I want to thank our host, Alia McLeod, and our guest, parenting expert, Alyson Schafer. Thanks for a great discussion, you guys.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. And can I let parents know, I appreciate your questions. And I'm just launching a new podcast where if you keep sending in questions through my website, through my email, I am happy to keep this conversation going through that as well. So thank you for everyone's participation and for hosting and making this possible for parents.
And parents, we're right there with you, trying to figure things out as we go. We're talking to experts like Alyson and exploring self-care tips to help us all navigate this time. You can find it all at HuffPost Canada Parents. Thanks again for watching.